Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. I am just trying to.
When we get married, we have what we call a bride price. And during the period of the bride price, the two families will have to bargain. So it's just like selling something. You know, somebody says, this book costs $50, and then I say, no, I only have $40. And then they say, you know, I can give you $45, and then make a deal, basically selling the woman.
I think what we try to do here is to enlighten women. When you see a man kicking you, when you see a man being very abusive using ABCD language, that's really abuse. We try to explain it so that we bring that consciousness to them. Because now they're living in that. They are living in new circumstances, or circumstances which were there but they did not understand them as violence. So it is that creation of awareness. And that's why I say if we don't have the money, the funding to do this work, then we cannot bring the awareness to the women. Because they need to understand that what are the behaviors which can be described as violence. Because if you don't do that, then you may ask a woman certain things which are clearly domestic violence, but she doesn't really quite think it's domestic violence. For example, if you ask her, are you abused? Even doctors get this all the time. You ask a woman, are you abused? She will say, no, absolutely not. But if you start to break it down, did your husband ever slap you? Oh yeah, he does that once in a while. You see, she's affirming when you start breaking it down and explaining the concept. But putting it in this big word, domestic violence, most of them will tell you, no, I'm not. We have so many different forms of violence, and I'm sure this is universal. Domestic violence at home, you know, within the home environment. We have marital violence, female circumcision. We have sexual assault and rape outside the home may be common in some cases in war-torn regions. And I'll go into a little bit of some of these situations. How domestic violence is perpetuated. The abuser will use any kind of harm. I mean, it could be physical, it could be kicking or slapping or pushing or biting. He will probably beat the children too. You know, you look like your mother. That's how it happens. And again, this is not unique to Africans, is it?
No, it's not.
That's how it's about power and control. Kicking is not new to. It's not African. It's universal. That's how domestic violence plays itself. Emotional, it will include intimidation, threats, it will, you know, pushing of chairs and, you know, kicking the walls and breaking the glasses and the pictures, the things we love. Some of the examples of intimidation will include, you know what, I'm going to grab these kids and take them back home. Because the man knows that children are the core of the family. So if he grabs them and takes them, that's one big challenge to women.
What we're dealing with this round table conference is, from what I know, it's quite unprecedented. And, or at least we are not aware of something similar having happened in the history of working on domestic violence. And I think it's, with anything unprecedented, you don't have a blueprint and you learn as you go. And so I just wanted to take 2 minutes to quickly summarize a little bit about what already has come to my attention and to some of my colleagues, and that is that there's a problem of semantics or discourse that we've already been struggling with. There's not a simple solution for this, but for example, the word diversity alone suggests divergence, and even though we intend to communicate that that diversity means a multiplicity, a plurality of differences, where the word comes from, it still implies a norm, and then people deviate from the norm. So right there with the word diversity in English, we're already buying into a huge history of complication. The issue of diversity in Africa is overwhelming. There's more than 5,000 languages. And yes, I do mean languages, not dialects. These languages have their own unique sets of vocabulary, syntax, grammar, their languages. And we are communicating in languages that were introduced to Africa not so long ago at all, French and English. And so working with immigrants from Africa in the US is going to have to be a constant language game and a constant process of adaptation, a constant process of translation, and the communicability of meanings is obviously quite difficult to track.
A lot of our clients, English is not their first language, so just emigrating into a country where English is not their first language is a huge challenge. Language barriers and limited English proficiency play an additional role in discouraging immigrant African women from seeking help or fleeing their abusive relationship because she does not feel comfortable expressing herself in English, or she's so isolated that she's not able to express herself in English. And sometimes these abusers use their wives' limited English proficiency as a tool of control and isolation by forbidding them from taking ESL classes. And also trying to understand the different systems, the criminal justice system, trying to get food stamps, housing system. So all of those different systems are foreign to them because it's not what they had in their home countries. And so trying to explain how these systems work is also a challenge for them. And just being able to ask questions and feel comfortable expressing themselves in English, or feeling comfortable enough to ask questions to service providers, that's something which they struggle with a lot.
4 years ago, I go back to Burkina, and when I arrived there, my aunt said, "Oh, our family was okay, but I have a problem with my younger daughter. The husband beating her every day." I was in the conversation. I was somewhere. I heard beating her every day. I said, "What you say?" What you say? They said to me, "Yeah, not for European people. We're talking about African. Men have to beat the woman." I said, "What? No way. No more." They said to me, "With your spiritual European way, leave us alone. The men have to beat the woman." So I said, "No, we cannot do no more." And I said to my cousin, "May I speak to you?" And she said, "Okay, what you need, auntie?" Because she will say, I will have some problem. I said, "Don't worry, we won't have problem." "Why do your husband beat you?" He said, because he said, I don't have to go to work, I don't have to do that, I don't have to smile in the people. Have
To
keep
smile in the people?
Yeah. So you have to, he doesn't want it have to be for her, for him. He have to be in house, everything. And I said, no, you are wrong. And I meet the man. He said, no, our parent was beating our mother. It was okay. Why you come with your
European mind.
To
Western mind.
Yeah. Or don't. I said to my mother and my two aunt was against me.
So they wasn't helping you to help your cousin?
No. And after that, I talked to my cousin. I said, okay, you know what you can do? I advise you, you should leave that man. Oh, I make a big revolutionary in the family. The lady, my cousin said, how will do that? I said, don't worry, I will pray and I will help you the way I can. And the family said, you will make the family divide.
Division in the family.
Yeah,
oh my God.
Yeah, because I want my cousin to leave the man, or we give that man, we give your cousin to that man. They didn't shoot. She didn't shoot the man.
Oh, it was forced marriage.
Yeah, forced marriage.
Oh,
so I said okay. And little by little, I came back to United States. I was talking to her, phone, everything, and I said to her, "What you think?" She said, "Tanti, I'm leaving the man, but I have to leave the city too."
Wow.
Because I will have some problem.
Some problem. With who?
Definitely, she left the man, and now she's happy. And she said, I got freedom. I helped other women to do the same like me.
Wow.
But when the man was beating her with the face, because she has a beautiful face, nice smiling, everything. So that's domestic violence. I think so it could continue in everywhere, every country, every family.
I'm not here to speak for African women. We have so many different experiences. Even when I work with African women in Albany, some coming from Sudan, Congo, Kenya, and other places, none of us has similar experiences. That variety alone gives us such a challenge. We do not know how to handle it. Every day is a learning experience. So I have to put that out there, that what you're going to see here is going to be just a sneak peek of what domestic violence is with women of African origin, women who are here trying to survive and make a living. The U.S. system itself gives us challenges because they don't understand our culture very well. You will find that they make mistakes in the way they address us. They have no skills in developing trust because we don't talk about domestic violence to people that we don't know. And they don't have the skills of trying to reach out to us and develop that partnership, develop that relationship with us. So how could you go to that person and say, I am experiencing this domestic violence? But again, the system doesn't take into consideration of what the man doesn't know what the rules are, the policies in the U.S., and how that will impact on the family. So they just go ahead and write whatever it is that they need to write, following the regulations here in the U.S. But that has drastic implications for the woman who has no protection. And so we are hesitant to go and reach out to a system which does not know how to help us. And do you know that it's a requirement that majority of the healthcare providers are supposed to ask women if they are undergoing domestic violence? And most of the time the report says no, there is no domestic violence. I will tell you over 90%, they will say there is no domestic violence. But there is, in most of those cases, there is either verbal or economic or spiritual, or there's something going on. But just because of the way the providers are asking, they don't get the answers. And usually when the woman says, oh, okay, there's no domestic violence, they give them a card. Should you ever experience domestic violence, here is the hotline. So what have they done? Nothing, really, nothing. So for the women who are coming from communities of ours, they think that it's just normal to be asking those questions. It's a routine just to be asked, and then they fill the form and it's done. So they don't take it seriously as important questions, even when they are coming from situations of domestic violence. So it requires cultural competency training for all kinds of providers, both who work within domestic violence fields, those who work in social services. They require to be trained on how to even ask questions in order to elicit the kind of answers that that are helpful. And that's lacking right now.
I work with Furaha House, and Furaha is a Swahili word for joy, so the house of joy. So moving from Portland to Texas, and Texas doesn't have really so many social services, especially for Africans. So the first thing that I did was to go in the community and try to find out, where people are located and what services, they are getting. And I realized that women are just sitting, at home, and there are so many issues, so many problems they have, but there is no safe place for them to share, their stories. There is no place for them to learn where they can get help.
Yeah, how did tradition contribute to domestic violence?
Like as in Africa,
In Mali,
Mali, precisely in Mali, in Muslim community,
yes.
Woman is a neck and man is a head.
Oh, woman is a neck.
Woman is a neck and man is a head.
Oh.
They do whatever they want to do. They deny all the time the right of a woman. You don't have the right to do nothing. They decide of everything. You see?
Okay.
My own mother has been victim because when my mother married my father, she was a teacher.
Okay.
My father used to have a little grocery.
Okay.
But the family told him, your wife cannot go to work and leave the other woman in the house.
Okay.
She has to stop working.
Like others.
Like others, stay home, having children, cooking.
Okay.
And then my mother followed, this is the law.
But your mother's father didn't say no, my daughter is...
Nobody.
Why?
It's normal.
It's normal. This is the way things is going. And always
Should be.
There is a mistrust with interpreters because it's a small community and the words spread so fast, and a lot of women will never call the police because they think they heard so many negative stories about interpreters knowing the husbands and they're reporting back, and you know how hard it is just to your name be dealt in the community in so many ways. So they don't approach any legal system for help.
I would like to highlight about our American-born children and the cultural expectations that we have for them here. And when domestic violence happens in the home, the school systems and how to work with the school systems when the kids go to school. Also wanted to mention about child support. When even the woman divorces and there's child support, which is a new thing to our men that Grace has really very well talked about. That's something to think about. How does it impact? How can we educate our women about just cause? Having worked at with TANF at the DSHS, I know there are ways that women who are victims of domestic violence can find recourse through the just cause. So we need to bring domestic violence issues and conversation on the table, normalize the conversation, and remove women from isolation. And also about protection orders when they happen, to give the women the implications about protection orders so that they know what would happen and what other things can be removed from the man, and then it can be more abusive or even more lethal, because sometimes they take away licenses, sometimes they can't do some businesses because there's a protection order in place. Just to know the implications about that. And also when divorce happens, women, when they want to file for divorce, it's really difficult. Just before I took my flight to come here, there's a woman who wanted, her husband is back in Kenya, and she's here, and she's trying to file for divorce, and she's asking me, just what can I do? how am I going to get this through? I need to. So this need for legal education and legal assistance for the women. And also speaking about us, for instance, Grace from Kenya, we were talking, and she's from the Kisii ethnic group. I'm from the Kikuyu ethnic group, and we were sharing. We were learning new things still, even though we're both from Kenya. So going deeper and just taking out the layers and to see how all these things happen, we need to have a forum where we can have more and more women coming together, and not specifically even to talk about domestic violence. If they can come together to a knitting class or sewing, we get Maendeleo ya Wanawake was a group in Kenya. Those of you who know about Maendeleo, it means development of women. Women used to come together and do small projects, and that's where they can talk about what's happening at home and how can they get help. Because being a direct service person for 6 years, I could see, even though, no matter how much I try to help, the women have to talk among one another. And when you talk about domestic violence, and we want to, come in, when they go home, it's, what are you talking about? What's domestic violence, So they get intimidated. But if we have projects that are going to help them come together, then we can go to the next step and do the education and to do safety planning with them within those small groups that they have. I also wanted to mention that this conversation should go beyond domestic violence and to social justice model, where we can bring domestic violence issues to a higher level, where we talk about human rights for the women. At that level, we may get help and get more people talking, and within our collaboration, this is one of the best forums I've been to, and I'm really, really privileged, because even in Washington, we do have services for African American women, and there's no cohesive, there's no connection that's direct like we have in this room, and that's something we can encourage from the different states, places we come from. Thank you.
We see domestic violence as something allowed for our husbands to discipline us. It's a normal way of making the wife to obey and follow the rules. So the kind of socialization we got does not help us to seek care, because we think that when it's happening, it's really normal. The other challenge is that we really don't discuss it. In other words, because we are supposed to persevere, and that's something else. We are brought up that way, that a woman has to do everything possible to keep a marriage. It's our responsibility and obligation to keep the marriage, to make it work. So no matter what happens, we already have internalized that we are not supposed to challenge what's happening to us. The idea of a man being the head of the house, respect is top priority. Submission. It's only that it doesn't happen the two ways. Sometimes it doesn't happen. It's supposed to work both ways, but most of the time it doesn't work like that.
In Mali, you get abused so good. So good, you can tell to anyone.
Yeah.
It's what you've been telling your mother or family member been telling you when you get married. If your husband does something to you, just keep it. If you have kids, they're gonna be blessed.
Exactly. Until that day, when my mom took her to the organization of lawyers that are defending women, she has to open up and tell them the truth that day. She's like, I've been abused. He went too far. Sometimes he even put a hat or he poured a pot of hot oil on her. He broke her arm, and what do we do with those kind of men? Wow. They call him up to ask him what's going on. Why are you treating your wife like this? He's like, but she don't want to listen.
What he said? Oh,
she don't want to listen.
Listen.
What do you mean? What she don't want to listen? But I am the man. Let's say nighttime, if I want to have sex, I do anything I want to do. But she don't want to let me do what I want to do. And the woman was like, so am I an animal? Sometimes I have my reason why I don't want it to, right? He goes, but sorry, but for her arm, I break it. I was drunk. That's the reason why. And what is so not right about this situation? They just kept him in jail for 2 hours and they let him go.
Take men to court in Africa.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of men sitting up behind this desk. This is the same law. They're gonna tell you, okay, sister, go home. You just have to respect and save this marriage.
Exactly.
They keep beating you up, and nothing happened. You see?
The judge is a man, and he will say, go home.
He say, even if it's me, I don't let my wife do that to me. And then.
And it's saying, like in a lot of constitution in Africa, that the man is the head of the house. So if he's the head of the house, everybody has to bend down.
And then also there is some culture in West Africa. It's going on in north of Ivory Coast, Burkina Faso, Mali. On the wedding gift that the father gave, there is a switch made of the tail of horse or cow that the father will say, you have the right to use this switch to control your family. And usually the husband will hang it in the living room. And you could see it, and he can use it anytime he wants it. So this is how sometimes the culture contributes to domestic violence. And another issue also in West Africa and in other parts of Africa is how female genital circumcision contributes to domestic violence. So when some men, like in my country, I've seen cases where men would say, would meet a woman that they like, they love, they marry to her. Then because of the consequences of female genital circumcision, there is some issue sexual-wise. So he would have other girls, and he would tell, I just need a woman who is intact. Yeah, I want this kind of woman. So you have, because you are damaged when you were a baby, so, and he needs this other women, you have to choose. If you don't want him to go out, you go out. So most of the time, it's a resignation. So this is a way of the domestic violence. A second way of domestic violence, these women could be victims of sexual violence because many times in Africa, West Africa, in my community, many times men see the sexual act as a right, every night right. The right to eat food, to have breakfast, the right to have lunch, the right to have dinner, and the right to have sex in the night. So sometimes you would be very tired.
They don't care about human feeling.
Yes.
You want it or not, if they want it, they do it.
They do it. And you can be accused by your own family to not do what you have to do. This is his right. He take it when he wants it. So
that's your husband.
The culture is the key of the violence.
Oftentimes, service providers ask us, why didn't she call the police? Why didn't she get an order of protection? And so it's just to give an overview of what happens if she does. Because we do have clients who do call the police and who have gotten order protections. But as Grace mentioned, that's the absolute last resort. And often when the immigrant African woman has called the police, she gets disdainful looks and comments from community members. She will be excluded from community functions, which are important to her, such as weddings, bridal showers, religious celebrations, baby showers, and some husbands go as far as to forbid their wives from socializing with her.
We talk about children in African family. We envision those who will take care of us when we grow old. And we envision those who will carry our name. Because in African culture, when the child grows up as a well-educated child, they said it's his father's son. And when he's not behaving well, it's the mother's son. So it's most of the time a woman's role. If she wants her name to be viewed and she wants herself to be viewed as a good wife and good mother, it's her role to make sure that these children grow up in the way the culture thinks is the best way to grow up. It's meant to be responsible. It's meant to give respect to the father. It's meant to represent the family name in the best way. So how this contributes in domestic violence? It means the mother would have to put up with the father. Whatever the father would do, she would have to put up with it. She would have to stay in the household to make sure the children grew up safe. So for that reason, anything could happen. She can be beaten in the household. She can be forced to do a lot of things that she doesn't want to do. And at the end, she get to the point where she forgot about herself. The I disappear. It's my children. I do it for my children. I say in the marriage for the sake of my children so that they could be blessed when they grow up. And I take this abuse in order for my children to see how strong I am. And if they see how I am abused and I'm staying in the marriage, they have experienced hardship which will prepare them for life later on. And also, having children can be a cause of abuse, and not having children is also a cause of abuse. Because in our culture, most of the time, the husband would never be seen as the one who cannot reproduce. The fault is always on the woman, on the wife. So if she cannot have children, she can be abused because of that. She can be pushed out, forced by beating her. She can seek divorce in order for her husband to have another wife. Or she can also be abused by having another wife who should come to give children to the husband. So children is a big issue in how women deal with domestic violence. Usually we say a spoiled wife would only have spoiled children. And a wife who takes domestic violence and stays in the house, who experiences hardship with her husband, is the wife who would have blessed children. So she chose to stay in the marriage because she's looking at this bright future where the children would grow blessed by the father and who would take care of her. And most of the time we will see some case where the husband sometimes purposely would abuse the wife that has like male children. And they will see that. And they don't have no right to intervene, because if you come in between a fight between your mother and father, you are cursed. The only thing you can do is walk away. You're not allowed to intervene. So these are the reasons most of the time where women have to they put up with it, because they want to feel strong, and they want to feel to have blessed children when they grow old, who will take care of them, who would be men, because they have seen the father men are beating, and they are men because they have seen their mother being beaten, and they were strong enough to not come in between, because it takes strength for a 17-year-old boy to not come in between a fight where his mother is being abused. So all these hardship strengthen them to be strong men in the future. But unfortunately, this exposure make them abusers themselves when they grow up, because this is the kind of way they're being taught.
The different challenges the clients face is definitely immigration issues. If they're undocumented, they definitely are more vulnerable to domestic violence, and this is because their husband will, either if he's documented or not, will use that against them, stating, I will, alert the authorities on you, or saying you can't work, even though there are means for undocumented women, immigrant African women, to work, not traditional mainstream jobs, because you need to have work authorization, but maybe in a hair braiding salon or if they know someone through babysitting or those kind of jobs, but he might forbid her, say, you're going to get in trouble, the authorities will find out and get you. Or if he does have a green card or U.S. citizenship, then simply refusing to apply for her.
There is a lady from the Congo. She came here. She came as a student with a student visa. She was from a powerful family back home. Her father was a general. And as you know, the Congo has been undergoing a lot of civil wars. And so during those episodes, her father lost his job and therefore became the enemy of the government. And they were chasing him to kill him. So she couldn't go back home. She decided to get married. She got married to a guy who is also from the Congo. The guy already finished his college degree. When you finish college, you can stay for 1 year to work, and then you have to go home or to continue a master's degree or something like that. So when they got married, the girl said she could file for asylum because she was really at danger of going back home. And when they filed for asylum, the man was the head of the household, and he could claim anyone that he wanted. So they both got asylum, and the guy became very abusive. They had 5 children. He became knowledgeable about the system, and he decided to file for a divorce himself. During that time, they hadn't applied for the green card yet. And then it became like a really messy divorce where the guy will take the children and tell them stories about their mothers, how bad she is. But she was surprised in court because the guy was already making a lot of money. He was able to afford a private attorney, and she didn't have one. And the day in court, at her biggest surprise, her child was put right there at a stand, a 4-year-old, to testify. And so the child was really in between. When he looks at the mother, it's like, mommy didn't, but then he looks at the father, and then he's like, yes, she beat me up. And then the woman was charged with a felony without any evidence, just the guy's attorney's word against hers. And it was the time to file for, the paperwork for the green card. The guy already went ahead and filed for the green card as himself and his children. So the lady wasn't really included in the paperwork. So when she called the immigration, it was too late. It seems as though her case was different. So they had 2 different cases. Therefore, she became not really illegal. She had to keep asylum for a certain period of time. And now you see a woman who she went back to school, got a degree that she can use because she has a felony. The judge gave her children to the father because he has an income and because she is viewed as an abusive mother. So she sees her children once a week, and by the time she sees the children, the guy has already filled them with lots of lies that they can't even look at the mother. And it's just, how do we begin to help a woman like that? What is hope for a woman like that?
For other Arabic countries, I see that a lot of them struggle with the custody of the children, and in Sudan, pretty much it could be both. And I have friends who lost custody to their husbands, and the husband went back to Sudan, got married, brought his wife, and the kids are living with his wife, not with his wife, the new wife. His kids are back in Sudan living with his sisters, and the wife, the ex-wife, is still here. So you see how unfair it can go beyond this, and that's why a lot of women, they want the violence to stop, not necessarily they want to break the family with the marriage. And it's hard, and it's a dilemma for all of us to support them one way or another, because you can get everything. Custody of the children and a divorce and a peaceful life with an abusive person who have never been taught anything different than just be controlling. And it's a challenge, and we are looking forward to help all these families.
Some batterers use their wives' undocumented status as a tool of manipulation by threatening to alert authorities, immigration, the police, of their partner's their undocumented status if she doesn't comply with his list of wishes, or they refuse to apply for a green card for her. And then there's lack of proof of abuse. There is immigration relief for victims of abuse who are undocumented. There's the VAWA self-petition, in which if the immigrant African woman is undocumented but is married to a U.S. citizen or green card holder, then she's eligible for this relief. But there are certain stipulations as well. She has to have proof of a legitimate marriage, and usually they want like a marriage license. Or for the U visa, that's for all victims of crime. And this is also another option for undocumented immigrant African women. And so she doesn't have to be specifically a victim of domestic violence. It could be rape. She could be witnessing a robbery or burglary as well. But unfortunately, a lot of our immigrant clients do not have the necessary eligibility criteria to prove the abuse, which is like a police report, an order of protection, or a medical report that is documenting physical injuries sustained due to the abuse.
I think the biggest challenge has been the fact that women are so silent about, domestic violence. And one of the things that we can probably try to understand and try to figure out how we can work with this is that we don't have a word for domestic violence. The culture where, African women came from, there is no such thing as domestic violence. Violence, whether it's physical, verbal, sexual, is considered to be normal, Just like I said before, because the woman was bought with this bride price, it's normal for her to be abused. It's normal for her to be verbally abused and sexually abused. So how do we even start, the conversation of domestic violence if we don't have the word for it? The biggest thing about domestic violence and, sexual assault and abuse in the homes is the fact that, we remain silent. And why do we remain silent is because, that's because we accept abuse, we accept violence, and it's some way part of our culture. And so it's so hard to talk about it. From cultural norms, it's a taboo for most tribes, to talk about violence. And it's happening because we also have conflict, and this is what the Belgium people did to us. They divided even tribes, saying this tribe can't do anything with the other tribe, and start identifying physical features that were different, like you don't look the same, your nose is not the same as the other tribe, therefore you are no brothers, you speak different languages. So it's so hard for a woman from one tribe to marry a man from the other tribe, and if that happens, then violence starts, not only within the marriage, but also with families. Families from the men's side fight, and the brothers and mothers and father and sisters-in-law, it's all really messy just because of, that division that, colonization brought to us. Like we can't sit, in the same room and we are not the same.
With clients who are religious, it does manifest itself differently in that we do notice spiritual abuse. So that's what I would say is a difference. But typically it's similar, except if they're in a polygamous marriage, then there may be domestic violence as well between the co-wives. But the domestic violence is pretty similar within the different clients that we see from the different countries.
We're like 56% of Muslim people.
Okay.
And we have 33 or 32% of Christian, and the rest are like Athi.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing about religion that I mentioned a little earlier, is like Muslim people like to bring that idea of like talking about the Quran that allow each man to have like up to 4 women, 4 wives. Okay, so most of the time when you try to discuss those topics with them, they always tell you, but even the women, they will tell you, but I don't see any problem if my husband get married to a second wife or a third wife. I'm like, how will you like to see yourself with another woman in the same house, sharing the same husband? She's like, no, it's okay. In the name of religion, I am a religious person, so it's okay. I don't have any problem with it. But as a Christian will tell you, the Bible will say that you just have to get married to one woman. So you and the husband, you guys are defined as one. So, you became one. So it's not allowed for a man to go out there and get another wife. Traditional people talk about it. But you know what's so funny is like, when they come about tradition, you see that women are really abused in the name of tradition, honestly. How? Let's say like they give a 13 years old girl to a 63 years old guy to get married to her. And no one will say no to that because it's a lot in Africa. Like young girls, 13, 15 years, you should get married. Most of the time, to tell you the truth, those old men are rich. So they take care of the family. So most of the time, like the girls is abused, but in the name of what? In the name of money, because the family need to survive.
Oh, and the husband is the one who's taking care of.
The husband is the one taking care of his family-in-law. Let's say that's like a lot of countries in Africa go through that.
Women also believe that, spiritually speaking, domestic violence is a test of faith, and they should stay and be patient. And we hear this over and over, and they endure so much abuse. And the cases that are reported are very extreme and very brutal, and it reaches very high level of intensity and violence. And it's all because they think it's a test of faith, and they should stay. And we always tell them or contradict that by telling them, yes, it is a test of faith, and we are tested every single day, but you're tested to succeed, not to fail. And succeeding is by securing your own safety and your children's safety.
In our traditional society in Africa, domestic violence actually was never accepted. It was never allowed. There were systems in place which addressed the domestic violence. For example, I'll tell you, my community was very polygamous, and polygamy was a normal part of life, very accepted. And I know many other tribes like the Kikuyu had the same. Meru and the Embu had the same. How domestic violence was controlled, I'll give you an example. Women will correlate because you will find a man who had 3, 4 wives, sometimes as many wives as even 12 those days. So the women correlated with each other so that if the man was violent to one of them, all of them will agree. And because men were never allowed to cook and take care of their own domestic situations, one woman and another and another and another, they will agree we are not going to obey. So he will be isolated from all of them. That alone worked to combat domestic violence at that level. But when it became something that the women were not able to handle themselves, there were elders.
family is important to our clients, and maintaining the family structure is important in African culture. And so that's our way of being culturally sensitive to our clients and talking about the issues of domestic violence. And we understand that just leaving may be dangerous, and especially if you leave without a proper safety plan and you haven't thought through the whole process. And so because in a lot of the mainstream domestic violence agencies, our clients are hearing the message, you have to leave, what's wrong with you have to leave. Why are you enduring this? There's shelter. So we don't want them to have the same experience. We want them to feel like they have the right for self-determination, that we're here just to explore their options and give them information so that they can make better decisions. But we're not here to tell them what to do. What does a client want help with? Even if they are a domestic violence victim, we're not assuming that that is the focus of their trauma. Their trauma could have been just acculturating, immigrating. That could be the primary trauma, not necessarily the domestic violence. So we go based on what are they presenting as is their problem when they're talking to us.
At the Refugee Women's Alliance, we have a Muslim support group, and it's very interesting. It's for Somalis and Arabic-speaking clients. And we were always surprised about how they open up about issues that we never discuss, and we don't think that women will talk about it in a Muslim community, like sexual violence. And we had a very long session, actually. Everybody was participating actively and telling us horrible stories and how they managed to deal with it, and brainstorming about safety planning if this came up to another family, what would they do? So it's very interesting. If we give them the space, they have so much to share and learn from each other.
The clients that we see who are from Ivory Coast or from Guinea, Senegal, Mali, those are predominantly the clients that we see. And so the domestic violence issues that they face is that they come in presenting with different needs like immigration or housing, or some want ESL classes or assistance with childcare, employment. And then it comes up that they state that they're having problems with their husband, or through our screening we find out that they're in a domestic violence relationship. So it's not the initial presenting issue, even though oftentimes service providers will call us and say that they are a victim of domestic violence and they need assistance.
Something that helps is to share some of, the stories of other women, and that's probably the way that we start, the conversation, around domestic violence. But also because it's such a personal issue, and everything that's personal in the marriage in our culture is supposed to be handled in the family. Just because from the get-going, marriage was not only between the man and the woman, but also between families. So try to bring the stories of other women and try to see if there are certain norms within our cultures that we can change